what's up, YouTube? Thanks for tuning in. Today we got a 2017 Freewheeler, which is a trike conversion, based on a big twin Harley. Pretty sharp looking bike. I can dig it. Customer named Rich, real nice guy. Happy to hook him up and help him out. Just put extended bars on, an extended brake line, and is having some trouble bleeding it. Couldn't get the fronts to bleed, and then at some point lost pressure in the rears, so we just unloaded it off the trailer. And we're gonna get to it. These could be a pain in the butt to bleed. So this is not a an ABS bike. If you did, you'd need the factory scan tool or a scan tool to cycle the ABS module and purge the air out of it. But this is linked braking. So what that means, you got two brake lines going to each caliper. The rear master cylinder feeds one, and the front master cylinder feeds the other. And these are 6-pot calipers, so you've got 3 pistons on each side behind each pad. And what happens is that the outer 4 pistons, so the top and bottom on the inside and outside, are actuated by the front brake reservoir, master cylinder rather. And the center 2 pistons, the middle on both sides, are activated by the rear master cylinder. So when you step on the rear brakes, you get a little bit of front brake action, mostly rear. And if you step on the front brakes, you get a lot of front brake action and a little bit of rear also. So that's what's linked braking. So undoubtedly what happened when he had a buddy helping him, and I'm going to bet that they opened both bleeders at one point without realizing that it fed the rear master cylinder, and we got air in both setups now. So I'm going to start with the fronts. First step is always on these is to get this master cylinder level. I don't know if you can see how off level it is. May not seem like a big deal, but it is. Because you've got a cylinder up here inside that slides back and forth. The lever pushes on the cylinder, and so there's a channel, and that channel fills with air. And if you don't get the master cylinder level, you'll never burp all the air out of that cylinder. It'll hang out right at the top of your little line. And the same thing, if it's pointed downward, the same thing will happen. You'll build up an air pocket in the cylinder of the master cylinder back here that'll never burp out of the air chamber. So swing the bars over. That's pretty good left to right, but we're still tilted down towards the back, which isn't awful, but some. So I think what I'm going to do is loosen up these 2 pinch bolts on the handlebar clamp, and that'll let me rotate this down a little bit, and then of course I'll rotate it back once we're all done. So I'm going to grab a couple of wrenches, and I'll be right back. All right, so these pinch bolts are a T27, and you don't have to take them out. You're just going to loosen them up a little bit so you can get that bar to rotate. There's wiring from the control pod, so keep in mind, or keep that in mind, because you don't want to pinch that wiring. But you've got a little bit of wiggle room. Hey, so you go. It didn't take much. And drop it down a bit. And I'd like to go a little further than that. I'm going to loosen up these control pod bolts, because the same thing, these are also clamped to the end of the bar, so I'm going to loosen those guys up too. No, what am I doing? Jesus Christ. Pause, stop. All right, that's better. So yeah, they're T25. Let me get a little more motion in there. There we go. Perfect. Now it's just about dead level, and I can pull the cap off. Might have been better if I had actually gone and got all the tools ready before I started this video, but sometimes I don't always think ahead. And we're looking good. I'm just going to push the little expansion booty back in. That's all in good shape. Fluid level's good. You got any bubbles? Oh, look at the bubbles coming out. Just getting the master cylinder level, and I'm getting beaucoup bubbles out of there. It's funny, I can actually feel it already. Good, no, let me check the camera. Am I actually getting those bubbles coming up? I don't know. We'll see if we can get you in a little closer. Easy, easy. This stand is a little tweaked. Well, let's see here. Yep, look at that. Big old fat bubbles coming out. Just getting the master level. And since this is a trike, almost, on a regular two-wheel, you can kind of lean the bike a little bit away from you. And lean the bike a little that way to tilt this master cylinder to get the other end, so you can get all the bubbles out of that cylinder chamber. All these bubbles coming out. You would be surprised at how small of a bubble can create so much lever travel. And that's actually quite a good bit of air coming up the lines. And I'm already feeling motion, like the levers. I'm feeling resistance in the lever as it's moving the pistons. So I'm definitely getting travel already. So link braking systems aren't hydraulically connected. The front isn't connected to the rear. They just actuate different pistons in the same caliper. So I'm not worried about air in the rear brakes getting sucked through the front or whatever. You can do them independently. You don't have to do them simultaneously. All right, so now I'm getting, there's some more air coming up. So you'll start burping the air, and I'm starting to get lever already. It's getting difficult to push the lever all the way to the grip. So what happens is you get air in these lines, and you're asking them to come all the way up the lines into the master cylinder. And with all the twists and bends and junction blocks, it can be resistant to do that. So what I usually do is I'll pull the lever in, and I'm going to back the camera up so you can see this. I'm still getting little bits of air bubbles, and it's good to let it settle for a bit. Every time you plunge it, you're sucking fluid in and pushing it down the line. And if all the fluid gets aerated, you're just going to push more air back into the line. So it's okay to take a break and go get a cup of coffee and let all the air perk out of the fluid and then keep going. But one of the little tricks I wanted to show you that I usually do, especially with fronts because the line's so long, the rear's a little easier because it's lower and you're a little closer, is I'll pull the lever in. Let me get a good shot of the lever. Pull the lever in nice and slow because you'll notice you'll get a little bit of fluid bubbling up as you start to move the cylinder, so you don't want to make a fountain and splash brake fluid. Pull the lever all the way in and then let go of it. And we just got a little blip over the top. Ooh, I got no rag. So there's a good example of what you don't want to do. It's okay on these controls because they're powder coated, and that's pretty darn tough stuff. But you'll notice I have one of my fantastic residential towels draped over the tank and the front controls because brake fluid is extremely corrosive, and it will eat right through clear coat and paint, plastic, that kind of stuff. So the same thing. I don't want this, going all the way down. There's already a couple of wet spots down underneath from them bleeding it and filling up the master, and looks like there might be a little bit of brake fluid on the lever itself, but still, I'm accountable for my own stuff. So anything that comes out of my shop should leave better than it came in, that's for sure. So I'm going to let me clean that up, and I'm going to use that right there in case I get another rocket shot. I just got a big old bubble came out of there too. So what this is doing is, if you imagine a fluid, you press on a brake and the fluid gradually pushes down and applies the piston, and then you release the brake and it gradually moves back up. Well, you may have a bubble hanging out in a high spot or down in a junction block, and what will happen is you push this all the way in and let it snap out fast, and you get a lot more pressure. It'll tend to pop that bubble loose and bring it with it. And then a few more pumps, you keep working it, and you'll get more and more air. And I'm still getting bubbles out of it right now. Pretty good size ones too. So on a two-wheel bike, you can, as I was saying before, you can lean this thing side to side because you've got this straight cylinder in here, so you've got air built up. And if you're tilted this way, the air is going to build up here. It's never going to get to the air bleed, and the cylinder is about in the middle of it. So if it's up here, you'll have a little pocket that you'll never be able to get rid of because it never makes its way to the bleed. It always rises to the top. So you have to lean the bike this way and let the bubbles pop out that way. And the same thing vice versa. You can lean it to this side. On a trike, you can't, so obviously I'll have to use a floor jack or something to be able to tilt the whole chassis to the left or the right. I mean, actually, to do the bottom side, this side of the master, I can actually turn the bars because as they rotate, they'll tilt down at the back, and that'll help you if I have any down there. But right now, this is a little high on this side, so I'm not worried about any air being on this side of the master cylinder plunger. It's going to be, if anything, I have a little air pocket up there. You can get this line lower too. Make sure. Ooh, we're getting a little fountain there. You got to be careful. Plunging in is when you'll usually get the big squirt out the top. You notice I'm going in slow and then letting it come out. Now we may still have air in the caliper, so I'm going to bleed them again. But I wanted to see if I could at least get some lever. And I've got enough lever to brake with right now. I mean, that doesn't feel bad at all. So I'm going to crack the bleeders on the calipers. Make sure I don't have just a little air pocket sitting at the top of the caliper. Because if it's at the top of the caliper above where the line comes out, that air will never leave the caliper, no matter how many times you bleed like this, not how many times you burp it. So I'm going to we'll crack those bleeders and see if we get any air out of there. And I think this is going to be in good shape. But I can't tell you how many of these I've seen come in with the same thing. I just had one with a clutch a couple of months ago on a street glide. Same thing, hydraulic clutch, and the bars are cocked and the master's twisted, and we're adding fluid and trying to bleed the clutch and can't get the air out. I'm going to pause y'all for a second. Actually, go get the tools for the caliper bleeder so we can do that without me running back and forth to my toolbox too much. All right, I'm back. So, brake lines and fittings are always pretty soft metal, so you always want to try and use a proper line wrench. I usually use a line wrench to break them loose and then seat them, and then I'll use a regular open end to do the actual bleeding. Because line wrenches are really thick. Like here's a 3/8, and if you match it up, and what happens is it's so thick it actually starts to come up, and it won't let you get the hose on all the way. You'll end up with brake fluid leaking everywhere. All kinds of good stuff. So again, we're going to protect everything in case we get any drips. We shouldn't, because I'm going to put a hose right over that fitting. And these wheels are powder coated, so they're tough, but the less mess, the better. That line should grab right over that bulge and be fine, and we'll be able to monitor and see whether we're getting any bubbles out of there. What I can do is actually get my hand up on the lever and give it a squeeze. So the rear one is for the rear brake cylinder, which is only the center two pistons, and the top one actually feeds the upper two and the lower two. So since we're just working on the fronts right now, we'll start messing with the rears in a minute. We're getting a little fluid, a couple little bubbles. Not much though, I'll tell you what. I used to work with a guy that said that all the time. I'll tell you what. Stuck with me. And we're getting, and you can see it draining, it's coming out. So gravity's just taking it down. Hit a couple of love taps. I don't want to nick up his paint job. This is not powder coat, this is caliper paint, maybe caliper paint, but so I'm not seeing any bubbles down there at all. And I'm going to reach up, give the lever a little squeeze, and then close it off. Now, I'm not even all the way to the bar yet. It's moving. Close it, let it draw and clean from the master. Give it a second to breathe. Crack it open again. Squeeze in the grip. Oh, look at it moving now. Close that sucker off. And let up on the grip, on the lever. And the fluid's draining around the corner right now. That's why it looks like it's going backwards. It's not actually going backwards. I gotta hook this thing up a little higher maybe so it doesn't want to look like it's chasing backwards. We can see the bubbles perking out. That'll work. So as you can see, I'm not seeing any bubbles coming out. So I think the caliper, I haven't checked the rear side of it yet, but the caliper is probably bubble free. Let me check my fluid level in the master. Still good. I got half an inch of depth before I get down to the port, so I'm going to give it one more squeeze. And if I don't get any bubbles, then we're going to call this side good. We'll do the other side. Crack that loose. Squeeze the lever nice and slow. Oh yeah, no bubbles at all. I'm going to close this guy off right there. Let go of the lever. No reason to waste brand new fluid. And then I'm going to drop this down so the fluid doesn't come pouring out of the hose when I unplug it off the bleeder. There we go. I can't tell you enough how careful you need to be with brake fluid, because that stuff, I mean, powder coat's pretty tough. I've seen it mess up the finish on powder coat too. On paint, like the paint on a car, you know, any kind of plastic like that, you know, polyurethane or urethane paint is nothing but plastic. Dude, it will wreck it in a heartbeat. In the old school, that was one of those, oh yeah, you steal my girlfriend? Throw a bottle of brake fluid on somebody's car. Take the paint right off, like paint stripper. All right, so that one's good. I'm going to put the cap back on so I don't forget which one's which and bleed the wrong one. And I'll go around, do the other side. And I'm not going to bore you with the details of that. It's exactly the same as what you just saw on this side, except it's harder to reach the lever. See you in a minute. No, isn't that always the damn way? I should have put the camera on the other side because I got a ton of bubbles out of the other caliper. Right from the get-go. If you look now, just using my thumb, that's as far as I can close that lever up. So we got great pressure now. All the air's out. I'm getting nothing out of the master. You got to be careful. You squeeze it too fast, you'll get the little magic fountain, and then you're buying a paint job. I see a little bit of like foam bubbles, like they're so small, just perking out. Give it a good flick. Oh yeah, little bits. Every one of those little bubbles that you burp out of there is going to make the lever firmer. And it barely took any fluid. He had just, with all the bleeding he had done, I think he's gave himself a brake flush while he was here. Fluid's nice and clear, nothing in it, not discolored or anything. Over time, it'll start, as it attracts, because fluid is hygroscopic, it'll attract moisture. And as it builds up moisture, it'll start to discolor, it'll go yellow. And then the more water it takes on, the more it reduces the boiling point, so it'll start to bake. And then you'll get brown brake fluid, and that's just nasty. You have very, very much reduced braking ability. So I'm getting a couple teeny tiny little, like almost the kind of bubble you'd see in foam, you know, about that, like we're talking about like 0.5 millimeter, like teeny. So I'm going to let this sit a little bit, let some of these little teeny bubbles perk up. I may flick it some more just because I have nothing else to do. Nah, I'm just kidding. There's probably a lewd joke in there somewhere. Flick it like it's a bean on a Sunday. Yeah, I'm still getting little teeny bubbles out of there. I doubt you can see it on camera, and I'm sorry about that, but you know, life sucks. I'm gonna go grab my flashlight and see if I can get the camera right down there and show you what I'm talking about. Let me see those on camera. Can I get them highlighted enough? No, you can't even see in there from there. Can't get there from here. All right, let's see if I can. Come on, tripod. Pain on my butt. Now I'm going to hit the damn lever with the tripod stand. You piece of shit. All right. So there. See all those little tiny little bubbles? Those matter. Those matter. So we got to let those guys perk out. Squeeze this lever down. I'm not going to anything fresh. And you can see the little port down there. Yeah, you can see that on camera. You can see the two little bleeders, and then there's a bigger bleeder down there. And you'll see this fluid. There's a little bit of dust in there too. That's okay. Oh, so yeah, just a bubble just appeared in that bigger port. Oh, and I'm sorry, it wasn't a bubble. That was the actual cylinder. But this lever feels great right now. And I can't even get it past halfway with my thumb. I'd have to really grip it and rack on it. Oh, look at that big old bubble coming up. It's like just when you think you're done, some more. I'm going to jack up this side of the bike and get a little more angle. I want to make sure that we get all the air out of this side because this is a little bit higher than that side. So there might be a little bit of air right in the top of that cylinder that isn't creeping down to come up that bleeder. See if we can level the cylinder off a little more. What you don't want is to unload that front tire and have the wheels snap straight ahead. Because guess what's going to happen? It's going to throw this master cylinder off level and probably going to splash a bunch of brake fluid everywhere. So I got my hand on the end of the grip. You can't really see under the camera. And I'm getting a little bit of angle out of it. Not much. Let's see. Doesn't take much. I'll tell you what, this brake lever feels great right now. I'm very happy with this. So that's all that took. And I'm just working it back and forth, see if there's any stuck to the cylinder in there. Because it's just a big piston and a bore. It's nothing special about it. You imagine a round tube with a piston that pushes all the fluid out one end of the piston when you squeeze the lever. So the only concern I had was that there'll be a little bit of fluid in the end of that cylinder because the port is in the middle of the cylinder. So you have whatever space there is between the port opening and the top of the cylinder would have a little bit of air in there. And that air makes a difference. That feels darn good though. Let me get this thing to straighten up a little more. A little bit of flick. Gotta be careful. All right, I'm going to call that good. That lever feels great. The customer's going to be very happy. And then we'll get on to the rear cylinder and go from there. I'm willing to bet that I don't know if I'm even going to have to take the rear wheels off because there shouldn't be any air back there if it's never been broken loose. There's no way to get the fluid out of it, so that's going to be air. That'll be fluid tight. But what I'm willing to bet happen is there's the center two pistons of those calipers has air on those front calipers because I'll bet crack them loose and let a little air in there. And we'll see. All right, I'm going to button this master up and get you out of my way. That's pretty good. All right. All right. Fluid level looks pretty good. I want to come up to that first step on the bar there. If you'll see, there's a little gauge built right into the side of the cylinder, right there, and it's got a step. So fluid level up to the step while it's level. Don't do it on an angle; it'll be overflowing out that side. Fluid level up to the step. Cover goes back on with the destructions facing the rider. That's the easiest way to keep it straight. Get a little instructions on top, and you got to be able to read it while you ride. Of course, you don't want to read it while you're riding, but you know what I mean. And an optional step is to throw one of the screws on the ground and have it disappear forever. So that, oh, I found it. Little bastard. And you're just squeezing that little rubber gasket so it seals. Doesn't need to be stupid tight. You can feel the screws. You can feel the lid bottom out, and then you're fine. Don't be a maniac. Break off those screws, arc the cap, warp the cap, wreck the gasket. I keep these gaskets in stock because they do get blown out after a certain number of years. They tend to warp, and then they don't want to seal, and they're not expensive. It's a good idea to have a couple hanging around your shop. Let me tighten up. Let me rotate his lever back to where he had it. And I'm just eyeballing the other side. I'm going to come back up there. See if I can get my fat ass around here without wrecking the camera. That'll be good. And this guy's handy. He did the bars himself, and if this needs to be tweaked a little bit once he gets on it, we can do that for him, or he'll undoubtedly take care of it. And if it's not just dead perfect for where he wants to be, having his hands on the grips, or on the levers rather. That's an easy fix. And I'll ask him when he picks the bike up to sit on it, make sure they feel good, and if not, I can crank them. And same thing here. These aren't particularly tight. I mean, they're tight. You don't want to loosen it up, but there's no reason to wrench on them. They're tiny little, like 632 screws, or probably 4mm metrics. And look at that. Ooh, baby. This thing's going to do stoppies. No, I'm just kidding. Get my jack out of here. And it's coffee time. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and go see the tiger dog. And come back and we'll do the rears. All right, so coffee in hand. I'm good to go. Maggie the tiger dog is lounging on the couch as someone who never pays rent and somebody buys all their food for them and loves them should. And I thought I'd take a sec to talk to you about brake fluid. It's really important stuff. I can't stress enough to use the proper brake fluid for the job. Doesn't matter what brand. This is not an advertisement for Prestone. I could give a shit. But use the correct grade brake fluid. .3, .4, .5. If you're just doing a caliper swap or stainless braided lines or updating something on your braking system, I always go with the factory spec brake fluid. In this case, it's .4. Later on, I went to .5, and earlier stuff you'll see .3. Like the Vet, the Beast out there uses .3. The reason why is because, as I said before, brake fluid is really corrosive, and each brake fluid has different properties and affect differently with other different chemicals. So if you have brake lines that are made to work with .5 and you use .3, it may eat through the lining of the brake lines and you'll lose your brakes. You're talking about rubber caliper pistons seals, rubber caliper piston seals, the rubber seals inside the master cylinder. All of that stuff is heavily dependent on the type of fluid you're using. So yeah, I mean, one might say, hey, well, .5 is the latest and greatest, and it's it's going to take higher temperatures, and that's what's on a C8 Vet or whatever the case is. That's all well and good, but if the rest of the system isn't built to take that type of fluid, you may end up destroying most of the brake system and losing your brakes and dying or killing somebody else. So always go with the recommended spec brake fluid. I don't care if it's AMSOIL, Prestone, AutoZone, it doesn't matter. As long as it's made to the right spec. I tend to go with Prestone because they've been around forever. I've used them forever. And I can rely on them without worrying about, just being a rebadge from some vendor. Like most of the auto parts stores, AutoZone, O'Reilly, even Napa, they don't make brake fluid. They don't make their parts. They don't have factories making auto parts. They buy from Timken or Prestone or Mobil and rebottle it and sell it as their own stuff, or Chevron, or, whatever junk you're talking about. They're not manufacturers. Everything's repackaged, more or less. So I don't care what brand you use, as long as it meets the proper spec and it's a brand you feel comfortable with, and then use that, that's fine. But use the correct grade. Now, if you upgrade the whole braking system, you put a high flow master, you put upgraded calipers, something like that, and stainless braided lines, talk to the manufacturer. What brake fluid is this stuff compatible with? Make sure it's going to work with the brake fluid you're running, or you could have a lot of trouble. And then you can imagine what happens if the stainless brake hose lining starts to dissolve into the fluid, and now that contaminates everything else in the brake system, and it's, you open a big can of worms. Well, I got a little faux hawk going today, accidentally. So that's about it. Oh, that's not it. That's not it. Brake fluid, like I said before, is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture just sitting there. So whenever you're not pouring it, you have the lid on it and screwed down tight. If you've had a bottle open for a month, throw it away. Brake fluid is not expensive because it will accumulate moisture. If that lid is not absolutely airtight, it's going to suck in moisture and accumulate it in the fluid. If you leave an open bottle sitting on your toolbox for 2 hours, throw it away because it's done. Especially here in Florida in the summertime, we got 98% humidity. You leave a bottle of brake fluid open for a half an hour just sitting there, or 2 hours sitting on your bench, just toss it. It ain't worth it because you're going to bring a whole bunch of moisture into the brake system. That's going to lower the lower the boiling point of the fluid. You're going to start overheating brakes real easy, and it's not a good thing. So, these happen to be I have a sealed bottle here that I never had to open. It's still perfectly sealed. It's fine. It's good, forever as long as it's sealed. And this bottle I opened 3 days ago. Today's Monday, so Thursday, so a couple of days ago, but it's been screwed down tight and kept with care in my garage. I know it hasn't had a chance to draw in any moisture and ruin it. But honestly, I don't have another brake job on the schedule for, at least 2 weeks. Breaker, clutch. I'm going to throw that out. The bottle's almost empty anyway. It's it's about a third left in it. I'm going to toss it once I'm done with this job because I wouldn't want it sitting there for a month on the shelf with the lid on it. Even with the lid on it, I wouldn't want it sitting there for a month or 6 weeks and then you forget how old it is. If it's a brand new big quart bottle, and I rarely buy the big bottles because you never use that much in one job, and it just sits around the shop and then it's crap before you realize it. So I usually buy the small bottles. That way as soon as I'm done with the job and I don't think I'm going to use it, I'll toss it, or maybe I'll Sharpie a date on it that shows when it was opened so you know how long it's been sitting on the shelf. So you have old brake fluid laying out in your garage, go out there right now and throw it all in the fucking trash because it's all going to be junk. And that's it. That's all. I'm going to get set up to do we'll get set up here to do the rear brake. Let's switch you over. We're like magic. That was almost like a transition. Damn. All right. I'm going to stop being stupid, mostly. My new tripod is super sexy. Get rid of my fabulous towel. That's something else. Household towels are cheap. Every 2 years or so, maybe I end up replacing a couple of towels because they get nasty. And there's nothing like a nice, fresh, fuzzy, soft towel to get out of the shower with. So I'll take the old one, throw it in the shop, and then I'll use it's cleaned obviously, and then I'll use it as a catch because they're nice and soft. They're not going to scuff paint, and they'll help protect you. And then as soon as I'm done with this job, I'm going to take it. I'll throw it in the wash over here again. That way, if it did get anything on it, I'm not transferring junk from one bike to the next. Let's see. Get you in here. So I love the fact that they did this in later years, was run a remote reservoir on these brake systems, which is right there. It used to be down on the rear brake master on the pedal, and that's a pain in the ass. But the nice thing is that it's way up in the air, so you can get to it easier. You're not, trying to get an angled Phillips head around the corner to get under the front exhaust pipe, or trying to reach in there and scratching stuff up. So let's see what this guy looks like. I'm going to need to get a stubby. I don't want to lean on that tank. The back one I can get to, but the front one's got that brake line's right. I'm hitting the head and the ignition, the steering lock with the back of the screwdriver. Yeah, I'm going to grab a stubby. Okay, one of those cables is out of the bracket too. There's a little cable bracket built into the end of the master here, and the cable's out of it. I'll tuck that guy in there. I'll tuck it in there when I'm done. I don't want to move this master around too much with the cap loose, end up sloshing brake fluid around. I'm hating my life. I generally don't like painting bikes for free, you know. This tends to be bad for business. Not to mention it tends to irritate the customers. And we don't want that. .4. Did I say it enough? Use the correct fluid and use good fluid. I'll probably say it again, don't worry. So level's pretty good. And that's original. You see the color difference from the old one, from the upper? So the upper's just about been replaced by now. You did a free flush. The rear is getting pretty yellow. So I'll advise the customer that it should be changed at some point. Let's see if we get any motion in the ocean here. Almost nothing. I can see the fluid shift a little bit, but ain't nobody home. Certainly not getting any significant pump out of it. And it's just disappearing, so it's not. I'm willing to bet we got a ton of air in these front calipers. Damn it, my cigarette went out. That's not okay. Well, see what we get. You see the color difference too? This is almost like honey colored, a motor or fresh motor oil colored. No air though. Kind of surprising. Nothing out of that one. And he had said that they had cracked some of the lines off of the distribution blocks here. So I wonder if we might just have air higher. And the problem is that, you know, the master cylinder is way down here. So the air is going to have to travel up to here and then come down the lines again to the master cylinder. And that's never going to happen. So what we're going to end up doing is I'm going to bleed this guy. I'm just going to bleed it normally. For me, that's how we got air in. Now push on the brake pedal. Oh, it's just nothing there. It's just all sponge. Open that guy, get a little fluid out. Oh, I saw a couple little bubbles popping up. Now I see a bubble hanging out in the line, so we're getting some air out of there. Oh yeah, there's a bunch. We just got a bunch of foam coming out. It's building so little pressure, it's taking forever to move the fluid down. Just not getting a whole lot of travel. Because wherever the air pockets are, they're spongy. So, you get a little bit of pressure in the system, you're compressing that air. And then as you open the bleeder, the air expands back out again. You're just not getting a whole lot of hydraulic pressure to push the fluid through to the other end. We're getting a little bit, but not a lot. I'll leave that guy down there. Level on the master's pretty good. We'll top it up. As slow as it's going, I might have better luck vacuum bleeding it, just trying to push material through it and get those bubbles out of the expansion block. Or junction block, rather. Come on, you little devil. I'm going to find a happy place to hang this sucker. I got to put a little rubber band on it or something so I can clip it up out of the way. If they opened it up with a junction block, I wonder if they didn't introduce some air into the rear lines. I'm getting little bubbles out of here. Not a lot, but there's some in there in the front. Almost knocked my line off. That's the problem with the line wrenches, is that the blades are so wide. It's hard to keep the hose on the nipple. Nipple. I'm feeling movement with the rear master now. It was just dead air before. But it's pushing fluid around. Where it's going is another question. I just had a thought too. Is that the way the caliper is hanging right now, that bleeder is lower than, I think, the top of the piston bore maybe. So I'm going to straighten these bars out, bring those calipers level. See if I can't get a little satisfaction that way. Actually, I'm going to come a little over level. If I come to me, it's going to tip the bleeder up on the high side. Of course, you can't see shit because the damn turn signal's in the way. You're going to have to trust me on that. Probably show you better on the other side anyway. See ya. All right, let's see what we got. I'll tell you what, that fluid is pretty nasty looking. It's pretty gritty. Pretty black coming out. See it rotating it. Helps if I get any bubbles working their way out. I'm not seeing any. Let me get a little pressure on there. Here I am, fighting with this stupid catch can again. For crying out loud. Yeah, look at the color of that fluid. That's not great. You motherfucker. Stand up, god damn it. Oh yeah, it was a bit. I see bubbles coming out now. We got a little bit. I think that was part of it. See if we can get out of the other side. You can probably see that one better through the damn wheel than you could on this side. All right. Now just crack it, see if we get anything. Not to be a contortionist to get over there and get that rear brake pedal from here. Little bubble. I got an idea. Add a little more fluid. I'll tell you what, I don't like how gray that fluid was coming out of this side. Out of the passenger side. Passengers. Out of the right side. Let's see if we start to pull that through. I wonder if it's from the getting cooked in the lines that run past the exhaust. Look at those bubbles. Yeah, buddy. Oh, I'm already feeling a little bit of pedal. Can you believe that? I can. Come on, damn it. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it's really low on this floorboard, too. I wonder if I'm not getting a full stroke out of the master. It's banging into this damn loose floorboard. Got half a mind to move this thing out of the way. I think this pedal is not getting a full stroke on the master anyway. Definitely getting a little more resistance out of the brake pedal. Like it's starting to get tough just before it hits the floorboard. Oh yeah, I'm getting a little bit of action here. Oh yeah, I felt it go away now. We're starting to build some pedal. You got to remember these trike conversion kits too. They use 2 rear calipers on the back, I believe, and so you've got twice as much fluid to push in through the lines. So it's not unusual to have a little bit of deep travel on the rear brake pedal. Here's my rag go. Now let's see if we can get. I'd like to get some nice clean fluid out of this side, so I know I've got all that nasty, cruddy, blank looking stuff out of there. You can see how dark that is. I mean, that's no bueno. I'll bet there's one of the lines, if we look up here, is tracking right next to the exhaust. Oh, well, that line right there is sitting right on the exhaust heat shield. But I'll bet there's an exhaust pipe. Cooking the fluid in the line and we're pumping it out. Fine by me. Oh yeah, pedal's getting nice now. Let's see if we can get the... That, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that fluid's starting to look a little clearer. Just want to make sure if we had any air introduced up at that junction block that we're running it right through the system. Now I've got to really lean on this thing like steady to get the brakes to touch the floorboard. So we're definitely getting some pedal up. I don't think there's any air in the rear. Now I'm getting darn close to calling this done, especially if I start getting consistent, nice, clear fluid. And it looks like it's cleaning up. Of course, the catch jug is all full of that nasty, burnt up stuff. So it doesn't look clean, and it doesn't look clean in there, but the pedal's getting way higher. We've actually got a pedal now. Oh, I just saw some foam, some fuzz come out. You know, some of those tiny little bubbles. So yeah, I'll bet we had a little bit of air up in the junction blocks, and we're just starting to get to it now. There's a lot of hose going up there. Air tends to stick up in the corners and crevices. Yeah, I gotta really lean on this thing to get it to. I'm willing to bet with these floorboard extensions that pedal's actually hitting those extensions before it gets to the end of its normal stroke anyway. So I'm hitting the floorboard and you're thinking, oh man, I'm running out of travel. But no, it's actually that the floorboard's slowing it down. Yeah, that was nice. That pedal's dropping 3/8 or a half an inch. I cracked the bleeder open, and I bet if it wasn't running into the floorboard, it would go even further than that. So it's just taking a long time to bleed it because the stroke is shortened up. I can't. Oh, I got to really bang on it to get it to hit the floorboard. Good stuff. And the fluid's coming out nice and clean, so we've got good clean fluid going down through there now. I'm going to go dump out my little catch can. That's plenty of fluid. That is some nasty stuff. That's coming out nice and clear now, as you can see in the hose. And we get all that burnt up junk out of there. And I think I need to add a little more fluid to the master. I'm not quite going so crazy watching the master level on this, because not only do you have to actually empty Where's the master? Not only would you actually have to empty the master to start drawing air, but this feeder hose runs all the way down to the master. So you would have to empty the reservoir and that whole feeder hose. So, I mean, I'm watching it, but it's getting low. You can see it in the sight glass now. It's about halfway. Let me go dump out this junk, and we'll see what it feels like. All right, so that's pretty much it. It's all wrapped up. Put the master cover back on. Topped off the fluid. Just left a little sliver on the sight glass so you can actually see where the level is. Good. Lever feels good. Pedal still feels good. It feels a little lower than I'd like it. You can get it almost down to the floorboard. If you step on it hard, you can touch the floorboard with it. But if you look, these floorboards curve up a lot, and the back is kind of sagging. You know, these are kind of, I don't know. So I got a feeling that the you know, this sticking up so far is stopping the travel, so you're not getting full stroke out of the rear master. I mean, it applies the brakes. You can try to roll it with the brake pedal down, and as she don't go, I'm going to take it out up down a block and see what that rear brake feels like, and give the customer a call and see how high the pedal was to start with. The rears are a pain in the butt to bleed. I actually did manage to get in there, down between the back wheel. I stuffed my arm in there, and you can get to the caliper bleeder without pulling the wheels off. So I'll save the customer a couple of bucks. I don't have to charge them like an extra hour for pulling the wheels and all that stuff and retorquing them and bleeding the rears if they didn't really need to be bled. So I just snuck in there and cracked the bleeders, and I didn't get any air out of them. So I'm thinking there's any air in the rear calipers. So that's it. I had the customer come by and check it out, and he said, yeah, that's where the brake pedal sits on that. You know, it had got extended brake pedal, and of course, the longer you make the rod, the further the end's going to travel for the same degree of movement on the shaft. And so it had extended brake pedal, and then the floorboards are a bit jacked up. And he said, "Oh no, it feels like it used to. That's fine." Okay, so he's good with it. I'm good with it. I would have personally liked a little higher pedal, but you probably have to update those floorboards. You can get full travel, full stroke out of the master to get the pedal up higher. So thanks for tuning in. Check out my videos, check out the website, all that good shit. If you got some bikes you need worked on, I do, you know, I specialize in Harley Davidson, but I work on Japanese as well. I've had plenty of, you know, Shadows in here, Gold Wings and Royal Stars and all that stuff. Still looking for commercial space. Once I get the right volume of business built up to pay for it, I might light a fire into that a little sooner. For now, here I am doing my thing. And thanks for tuning in. Talk to you later. Bye.